Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges as he explores turning the page on his life and yours. Hey, Charlie.
Hi, Paul. Let me tell you, we really have a show today that I think is, even after a couple hundred shows, I think this is a bit unique because we have a guest, Faith Elicia, who is very candid, very forthright in talking about her eating disorder and how eating disorders are not just limited to eating disorders, they are addictions, and that we have to deal with addictions. And so much of it has to do with, as we will get into depth in this podcast, about the need to go deep within, making changes deep within. And we wrestle with the issue, how do you go deep within when so many of us are thinking, I'm too deeply enmeshed in this issue that I can't change. Change is not possible for me. I will open with a brief little story that in the 90s when I was an alcoholic and I was drinking too much and I knew it was impacting my relationship with God, I felt that God had told me, well, that's just the cross you have to carry, that I could not face that I had an addiction that I had to deal with, and that took another decade for me to have to deal with that. There is a reluctance to look deep inside yourself and say you can change. Faith Elicia and I want to encourage you that you can make changes. You can make healthy changes, and you can be the person that you want to be in a world that you want to live in. So join me with Faith Elicia, and we're going to talk about the illusion of personal debilitating trauma. Let's go. Faith Elicia, what a treat to have you with me today on the next chapter with Charlie.
I'm grateful to be here. I've been looking forward to this all week after our little chat Monday because I just felt your energy, and I'm just usually very nervous about these, but I just felt your calm, and so I'm ready to go.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I hear that every now and then, that people feel calmer. I think that pre-chat really does everybody good. I get a feel for you. You get a feel for me. We kind of get some information that we want to cover. I think it does a lot rather than just a cold call, and the next thing you know, you're on a show and you don't know who you're with or what you're talking about.
Yeah, I agree. It does.
Faith, today you and I are going to talk about largely, I listened to what you had to say and taken a look at what you've written and thought about our conversation. I thought, I want to talk largely, I like this idea, but I think it's a very important idea of the secret life of those caught in some addictive trap, and especially with your experience, the trap of food and eating disorders. But there is a secret life, isn't there, that is going on amongst the whole addictive nature?
I agree with that. Growing up a child of an alcoholic, I didn't learn my father was an alcoholic until I was 16. And that was only because that was my first time actually seeing him, under the influence and just kind of aggressive. I always thought my father was just a rageaholic. And he would be on a dry drunk all week and would drink on Saturday mornings when my mother wasn't around him. And she kept it a secret. And it's because we have to present to everyone outside that everything is just fine. And I really took that with me throughout most of my life, just putting on a facade. Everything is great. I'm so mellow, when inside I was a nervous wreck. It's a lot of secrecy, a lot of shame, and it's hard to put yourself out there for fear of rejection, abandonment, so many things. And it's what I've learned, that we just keep it a secret. Nobody has to know.
Because
it's really the most unhealthy thing to do when it comes to addiction.
Oh, is that not the truth? Because we're breaking so many social norms, and we already don't feel good about ourselves, which we're going to talk later about because you have some great quotes in that. value ourselves, and so we have to be secret. And then if anybody were to find out who we really are, I think all of us would be shameful if people found out who we really were. And yet that's not necessarily the truth. So many times we're finding vulnerability is so attractive, is it not? That someone is, not that a woe is me, I'm dealing with this. I know when I first became an alcoholic, and not when I first became an alcoholic, when I first admitted it, and I would go places and they would say, you're not going to have a drink, and I would just say, no, I'm an alcoholic. And in the very early days, Faith, that really helped because a couple things were accomplished. One is that I told the truth about myself. But secondly, is I made the servers and everybody at the table accountable. If I ordered a drink, no one would let me order a drink. Because I said I'm
really
alcoholic.
Good.
Yeah,
because you were taking care of yourself and setting a boundary, like you were being accountable. That's really good.
Yeah, every now and then, once in a while, I'll do something that works, and that one did. Now, I want to talk about the issue that you wrote on in your book. Do you see what I see? I want to talk about eating disorders, but you, in our conversation, you really expanded that conversation to where we're talking addictions in general, and that an eating disorder is an addiction. It's not a special. It's not in a class of its own. It's in a larger class, but it's a specific part of a larger class, to be sure. And you've written this very thoughtful book. Do you see what I see? And which focuses on the ever increasing problem of eating disorders in the United States. Now, I have a feeling right now there are listeners that say, "Well, I don't have an eating disorder. This is not relevant for me." But that's just not the truth, is it?
No, and for myself, I believe it's, an addictive type of personality, an eating disorder. And I can say that because, we know it's somewhat genetic, and then the behavioral component. Well, my father was a recovering alcoholic. There's 4 sisters. One is a recovering alcoholic. Another one's a recovering addict. And I was petrified of drugs and alcohol just because of the chaos I saw with the family. So, this eating disorder crept up on me, and it just makes sense to me because it was that same compulsion to act out, and that shame comes in because I felt bad. It's like, this is so unhealthy. Why am I doing this? But I can't stop, and I can't tell anyone because it's wrong, but I can't stop. And what you were saying before a minute ago with, setting yourself up for success, going to someplace. I don't think I've had a drink I think I've had one since I met my husband. And I've never really drank. Maybe I've had 3 drinks in my life. I don't like it. I'm just not for me. And I could easily, anywhere we went, if friends are, "Oh, you want?" "No, thank you. I don't drink." And it's so interesting because people probably thought, well, she has to be a recovering alcoholic because she never has a drink. I never even thought about that yet, and I don't even care because whatever. But the eating disorder, like, don't even address me on that, because then the defenses are coming up. Because then, I don't want to be accountable. It goes with all that shame. So it's just interesting.
Tell me something. I'm thinking about an eating disorder is. Well, I guess it's it's not unlike drinking because everybody drinks, basically, and it has impacted our social life because people want to drink when they get together socially, and we're not drinking, and so after a couple of hours, we're not on the same on the same road anymore. They're often, kind of drunken who knows what's, and we're not ready to go there, so it has impacted our social life. But I'm thinking about eating disorder. I mean, there's nothing more accepted in the world than food. I mean, it's necessary for life. Yet, how do you manage an eating disorder? I mean, because you're obviously, maybe I'm wrong when I say obviously, but you don't eat like crazy in public. So does that mean you're waiting till late at night, or when people are away, or when you're alone? I mean, how does that process work, Faith?
Well, number one, I'm just going to say that no two eating disorders are alike.
Okay.
So, we can read the criteria, and there's so many different eating disorders. And I don't focus on behavior specifically, because for me, if I'm in a support group and we all have, different eating disorders, when we get down to the heart of it, the feelings is where we can relate. And food is a hard one because you have to eat to survive. So it's not like with alcohol, well, I'm just not going to go to a bar. We have to eat to survive. And it is a big part of social. So, it does become challenging. But for me, it was the eating disorder was very conniving, manipulative. So you just, for me, I would just do what I had to do so that, you're kind of under the radar. Nobody notices because you don't want to draw attention to yourself. So that there was a lot of secrecy and shame, like I said, because I didn't feel good. And, I have 3 children, so it made me feel even worse because, anorexia is the second deadliest mental illness other than opioid addiction. So I didn't want to die, but I couldn't stop myself. So, it's very important, and for any type of eating disorder, to really seek help, because it is not a me process, it's a we process. We cannot do it alone. And, the vulnerability, when we share with others who are going through the same experiences, that connection is amazing, because it's like, oh, I'm not alone. I always felt alone. I always felt flawed, really. I was talking with my therapist about this yesterday at my session, because, as a child, just the anxiety was horrific because it was in constant fight or flight with my dad with his moods. So the anxiety became horrific because you just never know when he's going to scream. So you're always just on edge. So that led to school phobia, where I was afraid to go to school. I had agoraphobia, where I couldn't leave my house for 6 weeks. And even with my 3rd pregnancy, phobia kicked in again. And I had to go to the doctor first thing in the morning, the OB, or last, because she knew, I cannot be in a waiting room with all these people.
Right.
So it's, how do you not think there's something wrong with me? And then the eating disorder. So it's a belief that there's something wrong with me. Nobody can relate. I'm alone. But this terminal uniqueness, it's not, because I'm not alone. And I'm not my anxiety, and I'm not my eating disorder. It's learning who I really am. And that's been my journey of going within.
Help me understand something.
Symptoms of life, yes.
Help me understand something, that apart from increasing weight, how does one know one has an eating disorder?
If it impairs your functioning, for me, it was just all I could focus on. And it was all I could think about. Body image, looking. I told my husband, I'm like, forget about men looking at women, like women with eating disorder. All I did was look at women. He doesn't have to worry about me looking at men, because I was looking at women's bodies because I was so preoccupied with my own. So it was constantly looking. So it was impairing my functioning because it was all I thought about. Well, the next meal, what am I going to eat? And it just consumes you. And we spoke about this on Monday, that I really think it became a distraction from my feelings, because so much was going on around me that I couldn't control. And this is where codependency, which is another root of all this, trying to control all these things, which I couldn't, but I could control what I put in my body and how much exertion. And when somebody's saying they want to take that away from me, no, because I believed, as bad as the eating disorder was, it was my friend helping me, even though it wasn't.
That's interesting. That psychologically that appeals. That is so many true with so many pathologies of the thing that we think is our friend turns out to be a demon. We need to deal with that. Now, you said something that I have on my notes to talk about sometime, but I really, let me look at my notes, because you said something that I think is very strong, in that you believe many of us alcoholics or drug addicts believe that an addiction numbs our pain. But you take issue with that. You don't feel addiction, that eating disorder numbs pain, but is more of a distraction. Do you want to talk to me about that? Because I think that's a very interesting concept.
Yes, of course. For me, I had a hard time looking within. It was my dad's fault I'm like this. This one's behavior. It was always like the glasses of looking outward and not within. And as I'm just focusing on all these other things, so it wasn't, I've heard people share in support groups that it did numb them. So in a sense, I could say numb, but it really didn't numb me. But if I'm focused on all these other things, and if I'm so obsessed with my body and how my body looks, I'm not thinking about how I'm feeling. But I didn't even know how I was feeling. That's the hard part. When I went to treatment, and I've been to treatment for my eating disorder 2 times.
And that's not for listeners. That's not a lot. I know people that have been in treatment 4, 5, 6 times. That not for necessarily eating disorder, but for addiction.
And it's okay. Like, we're imperfect,
right?
And we're not. It's just a bumpy road, and it's a journey, and we're up or down, kind of all over the place, and it's okay. I'm just help. You get help. But I think it's the last 3 years, I have a really good therapist. And even in treatment, like this therapist, I'll joke, like every week when I have my session, she makes me cry. My girlfriend's like, well, that's terrible. I'm like, no, it's such a blessing, because I'm finally getting in touch with the feelings. So I cry, we talk about it, I can journal about it, and move through it. It used to be buried under eating disorder and control and that outward lens, because I didn't know I had needs. I didn't know I had wants. I was just surviving, honestly. Just surviving. Just, God, get me through another day with this anxiety, exhaustion at night, because everything felt too much, because that was the lesson I was given as a child. It's too much for her. It's too much. I'll take care of it. It's too much for her. So you kind of take that with you into adulthood. It's too much for me. And it's not.
And so you don't have faith in yourself, trust in yourself that you can do something that you don't feel quite competent? Is that part of it?
Yes. And it's so interesting, because this is something I still work on with my therapist today, that false core belief of being incapable. But this comes from just years of hearing, it's too much for her, it's too much for her, because I was the baby of 5 and overprotect. But the bottom line is, I do everything I need to do. If I wasn't capable, I wouldn't have 3 beautiful children. I wouldn't be in a marriage that's 27 years and going. I got a master's degree with all these things. But I don't give myself credit for that. Like, I never gave myself credit, because inside, all of my validation had to come from outside. If you approve of me, if you love me, then I'm okay. Because it wasn't inside my heart.
You had a great quote on Monday when we talked, and you said, I need you to believe in me because I can't believe in myself.
And that was it.
But isn't that true? So true for so many of us. And, even the non-addicted, or known addicted, because I think probably most all of us have some kind of addiction or another, but some are much more debilitating and damaging and life-threatening. It is really hard to believe in yourself no matter what you accomplished. I had a friend who was going to write a book, and he decided not to write a book. I asked him if I could take the title, and he said, of course, but I never wrote the book. But it was titled The High Value of Low Self-Esteem. This is a brilliant concept, the high value of low self-esteem. And he said many corporate executives or many successful people in the world have very low self-esteem, and they're putting round pegs into square holes, and they think the more productive they are, the higher ranked they are, that it will fill these self-esteem needs, but it is round peg, square hole. It will not fill it, so they just keep getting more and more successful. That's why he said the high value of low self-esteem, that low self-esteem will drive you, but it never makes you the kind of person you want to be. You're not at a place that you recognize. You're at a place only that I believe that you believe in me. I mean, I need you to believe in me because I can't believe in myself. And you were talking that takes inner work to discover that. Is that not true?
It's very true. And everything you said, is on spot. I had and this is something I still work on, this perfectionistic behavior. So if I do everything perfectly, even though there is no perfect, and I'm going to mess up because I'm human, but that was unacceptable for me. I have to get straight A's. And all of this is for validation. I have to have this, and I have to show my husband that I can, I manage his office, that I can do everything. And even today, if he's, standing over me and I'm doing office work, I'll still say, can you please go on your side? Because I don't want criticism. And it just comes from that inner belief of I don't want judgment, because inside it's that feeling of incapable, which I am capable, but it's a constant telling myself Faith, you are. And it's a constant fighting with that. So that perfectionism, you keep reaching and reaching and reaching until the point of exhaustion, because until you are meeting your needs inside and taking care of yourself, it's never enough. No matter how much you have, it's never enough, because you're searching and searching for the answer, and the answer's inside.
Yeah,
but it takes looking inside.
And we just keep trying all of these other activities or other possessions. I always call them the 3 Ps of power, possession, and prestige. We think if we have one or all of those 3, we're going to be okay. And we're not, because what we really need, and I'm a strong believer in the gospel of Christ, and what we need is love. I mean, that is all that the divine is asking for us, is to receive the love of the divine and to return the love to the divine, and then our life is complete. It's really, I know it sounds overly simplified, but it is something that can be overly difficult. Simplified. Yeah. Yeah, I really resonate with what you say when you learned that if you do well in everything, if you get your straight A's, then you kind of feel good about yourself, but also they leave you alone, don't they?
They do. I was the child, I never had a curfew. They never had to worry about me. Well, first of all, the oldest 2, gave enough, stress with drugs and everything else.
Yeah.
So I was under the radar. I was the good child, because this way Dad leaves me alone. Just everybody leave me alone. And I could just do my thing because they didn't have to worry about me. Yet inside, we're going back to this perfectionism thing and this high value of low self-esteem. The interesting thing is, so, with an eating disorder, the focus on the body. So it could be, when I'm at this weight, I'll feel better. Or when I look like this, it's when, then. But then when you get there, I always say, wherever you go, you take yourself with you. So even when I was, at a sick weight and going to treatment, because now it's a health concern, I still felt like crap inside. So you could say, well, when I get to that, I'll feel better. No, I didn't. I actually felt worse, to be honest.
So what do you have to get to, Faith? if it's not that, what is the objective that you get to where you begin to accept? And I there's so many things I'd like to talk about, but I love your statement that imperfection is okay and there's no shame in asking for help. When do you get to that point that you understand acceptance is part of the human condition? I mean, so not acceptance, imperfection is part of the human condition, and that there is no shame in asking for help. What gets you to that state of mind?
For many years, there was like a disconnect. And this is something I still work on. So intellectually, I could have said, because this has been a 9-year journey so far of recovery. So I could say, well, yes, I know this intellectually, but then in my heart, I didn't believe it. So there was a disconnect. So I could say it intellectually, but I didn't believe it inside. I had enough. And even after going to treatment the second time, like my head and heart, they weren't together. And when I got out of treatment the second time, I still felt just not right, that flawed. And I think they say the bottom, but I was just like, enough is enough. I can't take it anymore. Like something has to change. And that's why I love like your whole motto with, doing new things and doing them differently. Because if I keep doing the same thing, nothing's going to change.
Right.
So when I got out of treatment the second time, and I told them, like, I was ready to leave. I go to Codependency Anonymous. I wanted to go back to my girls. I felt safe with them. And, the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, I don't believe there are coincidences. So I don't even know how, like, an ad just popped up for that. And it was online virtual. And I was like, well, I've tried everything else. It wasn't even excitement. It was like, I've tried everything else. Nothing else worked. Well, let's just try this. And the change started to happen. Just starting to be aware of where I'm at in this moment. And the thinking started to change. And then, in the class, they spoke a lot about being kind to yourself. While I was like the biggest bully in the world to myself. Empathetic to everyone else. If you're hurting, oh my God, I will cry with you because I feel your pain. But if I'm hurting, why are you hurting? Just a bully. And that's not okay. Like, why don't I deserve the same compassion that I give to my children or my husband or my friend? Because I never felt worthy of that. So the self-compassion, I took that, course afterward. It just all started to come together. And, the meditation and really connecting with myself and going within. Because we shared on Monday, like I always felt there was something greater than myself pulling me through.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up. I was before we take a break. I want to bring that up because you talked about a higher power, and there seems to me, from what I'm hearing you say, and please tell me if I'm wrong, and I'm okay to be wrong. That doesn't bother me. That somewhere in there you got almost like a divine inspiration where your bottom, forget bottom, everybody's bottom is different, but you hit a point where you just said, this is it, I'm done. And now I can't just act like I used to act. I have certain behaviors I need to change. I have collegiality. I have people that I need to get with. I have programs that I can follow, but all of those. Did you feel like, I'm going to make it through this? I know it's going to be a battle. I know it's one day at a time. And I know that I can always eat again. I know I can always drink again. I know I can do those things. But I no longer, I respect them, but I don't fear them. And so I protect myself, but I don't have a fear because there is this voice coming from inside of me said, you're going to be okay. You're going to make it. Did you experience anything like that, or was that just me?
I don't think it was like a big aha moment, because when I was agoraphobic for 6 weeks and didn't leave my house, I had vertigo. Like, my anxiety manifests physically. And to just be completely alone, like my sisters didn't reach out to me. You know, you get depressed after a while because basically nobody's showing you any care. So it's like just laying there to rot. And I actually went into a psychiatric hospital. During those times, people didn't understand anxiety disorder. But just, there was always something just giving me strength. And it's just, I guess, no coincidence my name is Faith, because there had to be something. And my dad, once he came back from treatment when I was 16, he remained, sober until he passed. So always preaching the steps and where it would make me insane. Mm-hmm. But it stuck regarding the higher power, because I'm like, something has to be working in my life. And I don't think that I still have fear of the eating disorder. So I'm not going to say like, woohoo, it's done. Because for me, this is a journey. And the eating disorder for me is, my therapist likes to say it's like a bus. So I have like all these people on the bus with me. My anxiety is there. And so the eating disorder is sitting there. But who's sitting like right behind me if I'm driving the bus? Is the eating disorder like yelling at me today? So it's there. And so I can't look at it as, I'm done. Because
I agree. I didn't mean to say I'm done. It's just that I had a feeling, I know there's work I continue to have to do, or else I will backslide.
I don't want to go back to that. I don't want that insanity again. And now I've come so far, like just working within, that I wouldn't trade this for anything. So does the voice still come? Yes. Does it sometimes scream? Yes. And then I say, okay, what's going on? Because if the eating disorder is trying to distract me, because that's what it likes to do, so something's going on. Am I afraid of something? Am I hurt by something? And that's when it's become habitual to go inside, what's going on. And
okay, let's talk about that. I want to talk about what's going on. I've got 2 or 3 questions, and we probably only have about 20 minutes left, and I've got an hour worth of conversation. Okay. But let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
Hi there, this is Charlie Hedges, and you're listening to The Next Chapter with Charlie, and my special guest today is author Faith Elicia, who has written a book that we will talk a bit about, Do You See What I See? And we are talking eating disorders, addictions, what causes them, how do you get out of them? And we come to find out in our discussion that, there are addictions and there are addictions. There are addictions that require therapy, groups, and then there's addictions that we just have, that all of us have, our tiny little addictions that keep us astray from where we want to go, and I want us all to keep in mind as we head down this path. But Faith, one thing I'd like to know is I am just curious of the data around eating and obesity in the United States. Now, before our show, I tried to look it on Google, and it was crazy. Every link that I went to gave me a different statistic. What % of the population in the United States is overweight?
You know what? I don't have that answer. I really don't. I think our society just feeds into anorexia, because you have to look like the models on TV and everything else. But then we have fast food on every corner because, parents are doing the best they can and working 2 jobs. So we got to get dinner on the table, and this is fast. So it's both ways. It's so hard.
Yeah, I read one of the things I read said college educated and higher income people have less chance of being obese than lower income. And I don't know what that has to do with anything. And a number that came up, and I thought the number was low. it said that 40% of our population is obese, however you define obese. That's body weight or body mass indicator. It is how you figure that out. But all you've got to do is walk around the block and just take a look, and you can see all of us are not. You know who has which racial group has the least amount of obese people? Asians. Only 17% of Asians are obese. And I live in an Asian neighborhood, so we don't see a lot of obese people, but it is a lot out there. What one of the things I wanted to know is that you have a process, sort of a ritual or a regimen that you use that helps you maintain sanity and not eat. Can you go through that? I'm going fiercely through my notes because here we are. I had things that you mentioned, like you meditate, you have a codependency anonymous group, you're a therapist, a journal, you practice mindfulness. Tell me what for our listeners that whether it be eating or alcohol or drugs or sex or food of any kind or even habits that nothing comes to mind right now, but certain habits. What of all of those different therapies that I suggested, what do you think works really well to help people get interior and get inside and not have, a hard crusted shell around our heart?
Well, as I said at the beginning, every eating disorder is different and every recovery is different.
Okay.
And I just believe that we have to find what works for us, because what works for me might not work for you. And also, look, everybody wants an escape. So there's healthy escapes. I'm a romance writer as well. So that is a healthy escape for me. I'm like in my seventh heaven when I am writing romance. When I get off it, I'm like on a natural high. I'm in the best mood. It fills my light. So that's a healthy escape. There's nothing wrong with that. We need to have joy in our lives and do things. Life can't always be about, let's talk about our feelings. We have to have fun.
And why is that called escape? That shouldn't be called escape. That should just be called a healthy part of life.
Fun, right. So for me, I stopped having fun. Like life just was going through the motions because everything was so much and everything was not enough. So it was starting to see the behaviors. So the recognition of the behaviors was the first, because I have another one, and like now I could see it when I'm doing it. And then once again, okay, Faith, what's going on inside? Like I get a high if things are on sale. Things I don't even need. I gotta buy it. But it's on sale, so now I have to have every color because it's so cheap. Oh my God, I can't believe how much I saved. But now I come home and I feel so guilty. Well, I don't need 10 colors. Well, now I have to return it. This is became a cycle. Buy it, return it. Where my husband, at this point, he's like, I will not return anything for you because it became so much of an issue. So, that's another thing. That is not healthy because it became so much. So now I have to run to the store again. He's like, you spend so much time to do this and then to go back, time I could be doing things I enjoy. But for me, that was another distraction from myself. And I'll start to get caught up in that cycle even today. And I have to say, okay, something's going on because now these behaviors are starting to come out and take me away from myself. So I need to start meditating more. I just need to start taking care of myself better, because it means I'm neglecting myself when I start reaching for these things to make me feel better. And they don't. They just take up time when I could be doing things I like.
Yeah, I
don't know if that answered your question.
It did, and I'm curious. I'm just because I'm such a journaler, and you're a writer as well. Do you journal much?
I do. I'm not as good as my therapist. Like, I'm better. Like right now, I'm in a step group with my CODA girls. So, like, we are doing through a book. So that for me, that's good. So we have the questions, and then I'll journal the answers, and then stuff will come to me, and I'll journal that way.
Right.
Like to just sit down and journal, like I don't want to. I'd rather do this. But when I have like the questions, then it just gives me a direction, and then it can flow. But that's not the same as creative writing. Creative writing is like pleasure, the feelings, and like I said, it just everything doesn't have to always be so serious.
Yeah,
it just doesn't.
I agree. Faith, I've been I want to take a little departure. I've been thinking that as we talk about eating disorders and addictions in general, and we talk about and we can also talk about bad habits, is that you and I have been fortunate in order to in the ability to go deep inside and see some things about ourselves, not see everything. There's certainly many secrets and many crazy things that I'm learning. I just went on a spiritual journey for the last couple of weeks, and it's just continuing to learn. What prevents people? Because people say, there's a tendency to say, I really don't have those problems. I really don't have any interior issues that are that serious, like the rest of you nutty addicts. How do you respond to that?
My gosh, I feel like I could go with you for another hour or two. Okay, so my middle sister and I, we had a fight at my father's funeral 3 years ago. And it's very unfortunate, but, emotions were flying. And she hasn't spoken to me. It's now 3 years. I've reached out because because I believe love should be unconditional, especially within the family. And my mother is so upset because, like, how can she do this and whatever. And I told my mom, when the glasses look outward, it's, all of this, and my sister has high blood pressure. And I was telling my mom today, until she goes in, and if my sister called me today, I'd be there, even though I haven't spoken to her in 3 years. I love her. I will always love her. This is the ball's in her court, and I had to grieve losing my sister, who's still alive, as well as my father. That first year was very hard. But until she goes in, all these situations are going to cause high blood pressure. Because she told my mom she had to cut out things that cause high blood pressure. Well, you know what? When you're always looking outward, life causes high blood pressure. It's how we perceive the events that are happening to us, how we act and not react to the events that are happening to us. And take that risk of looking within. I was sharing with your producer, my best girlfriend was just telling me yesterday, she just doesn't think, like, she just can't get better. And I always say it's like that terminal uniqueness that I always felt. I just can't be fixed. I'm broken. Right. I really felt I was broken. And I still have that sometimes. I'm broken. Why does everyone else can cope with life and I'm a nervous wreck? But that's not true. I'm not broken. We're just, and so that's what I told her. You have to just take the risk of going within, and it's, taking responsibility for, like, in any communication interaction, there's two sides. I have to take responsibility for my role.
But Faith, that is something in my experience that is very difficult to do alone. You either have, you have your CODA groups, and you know, and or else it could be literature. I read a lot. And so I depend on literature, and I read a lot of literature on silence and solitude and contemplative prayer that is all about going inside and taking a look at you inside. But if we just say those words on air, I'm afraid a lot of people will say, yeah, it's good to go inside, but tell me, how do I even go about that? You know, I'm a coach, and I'm getting back into coaching, and that's my whole goal in coaching is a place to talk candidly, safely, and encouragingly.
And that's how you go inside, by making connections outside with emotionally safe people. And, you know, I went to an eating disorder support group for years after I got out of treatment. And to walk in a room, you know, with 20, 30 women all sitting there, it was a women's group, and every, you know, like you share, and then the facilitator would say, who can relate? Every single hand went up. I'm not alone. And then it's, you know, hearing how they get through it.
That had to be so affirming.
Oh my gosh. It's so freeing. And that's the thing. We're not alone. But when we isolate and with the secrecy, we are alone. So it's taking that step and being vulnerable. Another host had asked me, do you really feel you have to be, you know, so honest? Like you have to put it out there. And I was like, 100%. Because I can, if I don't share what's in my heart and what I've been through, how can others relate and say, oh, thank God I'm not alone? That was the whole reason for this book. It's very hard for me to put my life out there in this book. My sisters don't know the name it's under. And, you know, I've respected privacy of all the family, but I have spoken from my heart and totally put myself out there. Because if one person can read it and say, like, oh, my God, I'm not alone. I'm not, you know, somebody else can relate. I've done the job.
There you
We're
go.
Not alone. I've done the job.
That's brilliant. I so agree. And you know, one of the statements we use, I don't know if you use it in Codependency Anonymous, but we use, we're about brutal honesty. And if you cannot be brutally honest, you're going to have a very difficult time getting sober. And
well, if I lie to you, I'm lying to myself. I'm hurting myself. By protecting my eating disorder, all I was doing was hurting myself because I didn't feel I deserved better. And I deserve better. We all deserve better.
Isn't that the issue? You know, boy, that is, I'm all over the place on my notes, and so I'm going all up and down because I know I wrote something about that we are deeply in need of appreciation, respect, and love. And those of us that are cursed with backgrounds or some sort of thing that happened to us can't accept that. And we can't. I spent a 10-day retreat on why I can't accept love. I mean, and that was the whole purpose of the retreat that was led by shaman and 6 days of total silence and reflecting on just on that fact. And I'm 68 years old, asking myself the question, why can't I receive love? I can give love. I'm a great lover, but I suck at receiving love. So
that seems to be kind of the root of it, huh?
It seems to be kind of the root of our whole issue. Well, I'll tell you what, Faith Elicia, go ahead.
Fast,
Please.
Real fast. You know, I think I went to therapy for so many years in the hopes of, in this 45 minutes to an hour a week, just fix me. Can somebody please fix me? But I'm serious. I really believed that 1 hour a week, and it just, like, because nobody could fix me except me. And it's not even about fixing, because I'm not broken. I'm really not. And you say, you know, coming from, like, I don't know, whatever word you just used, but I'm so blessed from the past that I've had. It was horrible, but I'm so grateful, because if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be where I am now. I would have never even been on this journey of, let's look within, let's feed this light inside, let's believe I'm worthy. And and reach for this and want to wake up and try each day. Because I'd have no reason to. All of that pain has led me to, there has to be a better way. So this is the journey of finding the better way.
Boy, we think so similarly. I've my listeners know I've talked quite a bit about what were the very difficult times of my life where I was making stupid decisions. But even without those times, I would not be the person I am today without those times. I learned so much about life, about me, about the core me, and about and good and improvable areas about me. I think your line that you don't have to be ashamed of your past, imperfection is okay. We just did a show 2 or 3 weeks ago on a Japanese concept called wabi-sabi, which is imperfect, incomplete, and in something else. But that is what life is. It's imperfect, incomplete, and in, what is it, Paul? In imperfect, incomplete, and yeah, I always forget the third one. But that's so important. Faith Elicia, you are awesome. Thank you so much for this engaging conversation.
Well, thank you, and you're awesome too. You're like a big teddy bear. You're just the sweetest thing.
How kind of you to say. No one has ever said that of me. I've had exactly the opposite thing said of me plenty of times.
Wow. I'm not saying the opposite. I'm saying you're a big teddy bear.
I sure appreciate your candor and your willingness to share tidbits of your inner secret life that we need to hear. This secret life that we're all living is just so damaging, and so many need to hear your story. Thank you. I will include a link to your book, which we didn't even talk about, but I'm assuming that we talked about your book. Do You See What I See? And I have a link to that. That will be on the show notes. Anything else about your life personally? People get in touch with you, or any other thing you would like listed, or are you just okay with that?
My website.
Oh, you have a website?
Yeah.
How come I didn't know that?
I can send it to you.
What is
there's
it?
Just lots of information on where to find support.
Oh, really? What is it?
There are programs that offer free support, like ANAD. So I do have a lot of help and support are available.
What's the website? www.
It's Faith, Elicia.com. And I also have, all the DSM criteria. And I just say, just look at it with open eyes. Because
so Faith Elicia?
We're not going to have, yes, just be open-minded to reading it. And then I also made a YouTube channel, just putting myself out there more. I just made a video of the eating disorder, just so loud, and how to just work through it and, just kind of fight back against the eating disorder voice.
Is there a dress for that, or?
It's just Faith Elicia. So I'm just taking risks, putting myself out there, and then having anxiety that because I'm being vulnerable.
Way to go, friend. It
is what it is.
That's perfect. That's so nice. Thank you. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I really am grateful and appreciative.
And as usual, I want to thank all our listeners for tuning into the next chapter with Charlie. And until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.